So, I guess welcome to the ESA podcast. Aaron, you are the literal first guest. It's the first time we've run through it. So first and foremost, thank you for being on and for being so proactive and for wanting to shoot right away.
Dude, yeah, thank you for having me. Had to jump on the opportunity. I've been a first guest actually on like 4 shows now. So
really?
Yeah, it's like a recurring theme. It's everyone comes to me for their first show.
That is
He's
amazing.
the guy.
That is
Anyone starting a podcast, he's the guy.
Exactly.
Watch and take note. Aaron is
That's because they know I'll say yes, probably.
That is awesome. Well, I guess like introductions, obviously Aaron from Slabstox. If you're in the card space, you know who Slabstox is, but I guess for the people that don't, why don't you give a little elevator pitch on what a Slabstox is, what you guys do, and what you believe that you mean to the card world? Because obviously, I think everyone has their opinion on that.
Sure, yeah. So 2.5 years ago, I started Slabstox with the mission just to make sports cards aware to people that didn't know what they were, or didn't know that they brought value, or brought future value like the stock market. So I just started posting some graphs on Instagram. Got my buddy Nate involved, a longtime neighbor, and we just kind of went off and running from there, doing the whole content thing between Instagram, YouTube, podcast, and is eventually just kind of tumbled into this massive social media network that we just report on card values, on sports data, with the long-term goal of launching a website that you can kind of track the sports cards like your Yahoo Finance stocks. That's the plan. But it's been a fun ride, and I've met a ton of people on the way. And it's just a wonderful journey in cards. Honestly, I've been collecting my whole life, so to be able to do it every day now since then is even better.
Absolutely. So that was awesome. But I really want to obviously hone in on a couple of different aspects of what you just kind of went through. So, I mean, I've been doing sports cards since I was obviously 5 or 6 years old as well, but I don't have a sports card company. So kind of walk me through, especially on, this podcast where our big focus is really on, hence on the ESA play, the Every Second Accounts name is, when every second counts, how do you make every one, count for something great? And what you've been able to build, is not just that of what I would, say a traditional, sports card fan, how they've approached and what they've built within, the hobby sphere. So kind of walk me through the process of, where did you, obviously I know the story, but where did you kind of first get the idea to want to do something more within the hobby, and then kind of walk me through how that.
Sure. So a lot of people, I think, in the sports card industry that like own a sports card business are buying and selling on a super high level that they built up from like 3 years ago because they're in early. They got a ton of capital from, being there before the boom, and then they can just continually, regenerate that through grading or buying and flipping, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I went at it with a totally different approach. 2 years ago, I always loved buying and selling cards, which is really what like sparked my interest in it. Like I had a very entrepreneurial mindset. I graduated from UW-Mass and for business school, but along the way, I always knew I wanted to like do something more, meaning like teach others about it. Because many people in the industry at least 2 years ago, you'd see more people come in, and those people would get really upset with the new people, right? They're like, oh, encroaching on our territory type of thing, like really like gatekeepish. Like I always went at it with the opposite mindset. Like, that's funny. I said mindset. I literally saw your book up there. It says mindset.
Yeah, literally.
I probably said it because I was looking at it. The thing is that like the more people involved, the better. You can never go wrong with more people involved, loving what you're doing, and just building up the industry from the ground up, which is really what happened in the last 2 years. And I went into it thinking like, I want to make sports cards cool, because back when I was in high school, sports cards were not cool. Like buying and selling sports cards was not common. I was literally one of the only ones in my entire high school probably that did it, or at least that I knew of. And if anyone else did, they're probably like me, wasn't talking about, so I wouldn't know. I kind of wanted to change that stereotype, that's for kids. And Gary Vee helped that out a lot by coming in, April 2019. He kind of kickstarted that whole movement that sports cards can come back like they were in the 90s, but this time it's even better because everything is serial numbered. There's PSA grading where you can read pop reports and see scarcity levels, and social media to share what you're buying, and transactional through eBay and digital and all that stuff just really helped boom it. And I went into it, not knowing what the heck this could be. Literally, like my plan has changed a million times with still the same overarching goal, but like the day-to-day switches all the time. But in reality, it was just like understanding I knew something that could benefit others, and I just want to start doing it. I just picked up my Instagram account and just started posting. And is one of the first people ever posted charts to Instagram of sports cards. And I was making them manually. I still have been to this day, but we are getting close. Fingers crossed in the next 3 weeks to launching our website finally.
Beautiful.
And it's just been a wild ride with a lot of bumps along the road in terms of trying to launch a website with eBay shutting down their data feeds for people, restricting the APIs. But it's it's funny, like we just for people who aren't aware, like we tried to come out with this platform like a year ago, and we were going to have eBay produce all our data, all of our things for sale, and we would just pull off of their marketplace to do it. Well, they shut down the API and everything, and we couldn't get access to that or host it. So basically we flopped a complete website release that was supposed to come out 2 months after we announced it. Now we're like almost a year later come June, and we still haven't released anything. So I don't think that many places would make it through a flop, like a year, like complete flop of a product and still be relevant. But we've always had the mindset that content is king. If we can help bring information and knowledge to people, they will continually come back and discuss with us, listen to us, talk with us. So really what it is just, I was very fortunate to be there early, like being on Instagram and creating sports card content that was not like, hey, here's a picture of my card, like, do you like it type of thing? Like that really paid dividends because people started to see us first, come to us first, and follow us first, of course, and discuss first with us. So, built up to 45,000 plus followers on Instagram over like 2 years, and not stopping yet, that's for sure.
Man, so you literally just unpacked a ton of shit, and literally like there were 4 or 5 of my talking points were in what you just said. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit more specifically. So I guess you've hit on a lot of things and I think one of the trends that I've noticed and really, really going into, because obviously I know your story, obviously we know each other fairly well, I would like to say. But what's really impressed me about you guys more than a lot of other, even just sports card pages or this and that, is, the way that you've continued to adapt, continue to, really, basically, I don't want to use the word like relevant, but basically stay super on top of everything that's going on within the space. And I think you've really capitalized on a lot of different aspects of it. And you've hit on them, whether it's the charts, whether it's the graphs. I'm obviously a huge fan of, I'm literally using this as the terminology PSA, not the company, but being like that, foundational voice for, just providing a lot of insights and being very informative for really everyone in the space, not just beginners, but doing stuff that is relevant and, very, I would say, worthwhile to even more experienced people in the, card world space, such as myself. But how have you continued, because I know you mentioned that, there's been a lot of ups and downs, and you've gone a lot of trials and tribulations, and, a lot of different pivots from your day one. How have you managed to, like, if you would say, like, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from a mindset standpoint, how have you, navigated that? Like, how do you navigate through, and I guess you can answer for Nate. At some point, I'll have to have Nate on. I kind of feel like a dick for not having him on this one.
Right.
But how do you go through those things? I know, literally, like, we've talked, and I think you've announced it now, so I don't feel bad bringing it up, but like, the Gary Vee meeting was going to be the biggest meeting ever. I think we sat down at Buffalo Wild Wings. I think that's where we always met. But but that was going to be huge, and then that kind of fizzled out. And then, you guys have really managed to always stay on top. So kind of walk me through your mindset, and feel free to give, more examples for, like the Gary Vee's.
So really just quick thing. We were supposed to get hired by Gary Vee to create sports card content through OMS companies. That was like June of 2019. He noticed us, flew us out to New York, talked about it, was supposed to happen. That never did. And at that point, like, Nate just quit his job, my business partner.
Yeah. I literally worked with him at the time.
That's how we got to know each other.
Right.
So we probably should have brought that up.
At first, when I heard Nate say that, I'm like, he's like, oh yeah, do some stuff. Like, everyone and their friend has like, oh yeah, I'm working on this thing. I'm like, all right. And then I brought up to Sutton, like, oh, I know a guy who knows sports cards. And I showed him, so I asked him what his collection was, and he's like, oh, he's got some, like, good shit. Like, he's not just some, like, random guy, like, with this stuff. And then, he brought up the whole Gary Vee thing as well, flying out there.
And like, and not to interrupt that thought, but just to build on that a little bit, what's crazy to me is now, for how popular sports cards are, and I think that this actually plays into it, how nuts is that was, what, 2 maybe years ago at this point, maybe 2.5 tops, that literally Nate bringing up sports cards and Sam bringing that up and like, oh shit, someone else who actually does that? That's how foreign that shit was. And literally we got together not even on business stuff at first. we just got together just because, yo, it's somebody else who we can actually talk sports cards to.
I know.
Like, how nuts is that? Like, that's actually crazy to, like, full circle that to, like, what you mentioned earlier. That's crazy.
I never really met many, like, personal people like that did sports cards. Just like, you know, how Sam reacted to Nate saying that and then bring it up to you. It's like, dude, I know someone that does it too. Like, someone in the wild. Like, that's very much what it was like back then. Absolutely. Which is also really crazy to think, because, like, you think back to Gary starting to talk about it, and it's like, oh, like the market started to really move up, but like it was nowhere near what it is now, obviously, which is crazy to think how much growth it's went through since he even started talking about it. You know, you kind of think sometimes that stuff just like fizzles out, you know, like as like influencers come in and talk about something and it might not work out, but this really worked out. But to get back to like how we kind of kept on changing, honestly, I think that one of my best traits is reading consumer demand and reading customer thoughts and stuff. Like, I am just like everyone else that follows us. I am 22. I started collecting sports cards when I was young. I understand it just like them. So to me, it's like I can always see where the next thing is coming. Like, I was big on soccer cards, which is obviously has nothing to do with anyone else, but that type of thing makes me watch others, see what they're doing, gives me insight into how we need to change. So I'm always thinking about how can we start something new that other people will watch, or how do we start something new that other people will comment on? Like, really, like, you could, if I sat here and did the same exact thing for the last 2 years, we would be like irrelevant. Just like I was saying, like, we would never have made it anywhere. We would have been talking about Bowman Chrome prospects for the last 2 years, baseball prospects for the last 2 years, and we never would have been even close to what we are now. We've always made pivots into talking about what people are talking about. It really is just trying to always feed into what people want to hear, what they want to know, what they want to understand. And really the biggest thing to go at it is trying to get others to discuss about with other people, to learn about it, not trying to tell people what to do. That's the biggest thing, is always trying to make sure that we're like audience driven. Bring up a topic. People can hate on it. People can love it. I don't care at all. Just talk about it, learn about it. And that's really where it comes in. I think a lot of people really learn through reading comments on our page, which is why our page is valuable. Really, is because of the audience that types in there. Like, if you think about it, through Instagram, I don't try to give like that much insight through. I try to prompt questions that will lead people to figure out the insight. YouTube and all that stuff, you know, we're trying to do much more about talking about sets and sharing information, but it's really what people love to see. And, you know, I will say, like, I remember something you said a long time ago, and this was maybe like 2 years ago. You're like, hey, you need to be responding to every single person that comments on your page. Mm-hmm. So I did do that for a while, but then that kind of just built up to the point where everyone else was responding to each other, and then I don't have to do it anymore. So absolutely, really, like, anyone that's out there, it does take a lot of work to get that going. It does not come for free. Well, time is not free, you know, like, it comes with a bunch of time spent.
Absolutely, which is more important than even the money aspect. And actually, to hit on that, that's actually why I made the recommendation so long ago, was because that's actually what that kind of pushes, is when you're responding and you're engaging, that people start doing it to each other. And it's literally that formula of then at some point you can remove yourself from it and everyone else will do it, but lead by the example of what you want in your comment section.
Exactly. It's exactly what happened too. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, like, jumping in, you know, kind of like continuing to that, I've always been a huge fan of what you guys, I know Sam does his own, you know, where he talks more insightful. I haven't watched enough of his, you know, content to speak more in depth into that. So I know he gives recommendations and talks about prices and stuff like that. But I think, you know, from a very early on standpoint, one of the biggest misconceptions I believe people had about what you guys do and the content you guys post was that you guys are hyping shit. And I think, as I would put myself in the middle of being an old head and a new head in sports cards. I've been in it literally, as I said, since I was 5 or 6 years old. I'm buying and selling on eBay since I think 2001, which is nuts. I mean, I literally remember my dad sending checks for stuff that I was buying, and we'd get, like, it was nuts. I mean, like, there were money orders. It was crazy. It was a totally different world. So I have a little bit of that old head in me, but then my age, and I guess, you know, some of that would play more into the new head space. So I kind of consider myself to be in the middle of you know, two demographics of sports card people. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I thought, and I think you guys have kind of done a great job, and just in time have grown out of it, because, you know, you've proven time and time again it's not the case. But that you guys aren't hyping stuff up, or that you're not, just like hyperinflating a market or posting stuff that, I mean, first and foremost, that you guys have, that was an asinine thing very early on that, I know kind of took you guys by, took you guys by storm, and everyone that kind of followed you guys, that was its own issue. And I don't want to hone in on that, obviously, that's water to the bridge, but I know that type of stuff and that whatever you guys were posting was then kind of going up. But I think what's so interesting about that is that was going to be a given, just because in any sort of market, you have CNBC talking about stocks, and you have Investor Place, and you have, I can name 1,000 different stock sites that post about stocks, that when they post about, either their opinions or even just analysis, in those markets, they're so large that it doesn't really make a huge indent. But I think what we're seeing now in sports cards, that so many people are talking about it, there are still, these buyer groups and stuff that do move the market. I'm not ignorant to that fact, but you know who those people are, and you guys aren't those people. And I think where you guys got a bad rap is because you guys were so early with this stuff, is that when the market started to, adjust accordingly, well, you guys were the only people really giving thoughts on cards or posting charts on cards.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of navigate, so it was bound to like shift it a bit because nobody else was doing it. But now that so many people are, when you guys post, I don't see any correlation with kind of the market. Yeah. So you guys have never been a problem.
You took the words right out of my mouth. We were so early. We were like the only voice to listen to in terms of like, what should you potentially be looking at buying, and I kind of like ran with that a bit for a couple of months because people like seem to be starved for that, like learning from others. They just seem to be. So I was like, okay, if people are, I'm just going to tell them what I think they should buy, and that's exactly what happened for a couple of months. And at that time, like you got 1,500 followers on Instagram. We had like 2,000 maybe. Never did I think that that's enough to move a sports card market. But when there's no one that listens to others and then everyone listens to one source, everyone buys off that one source, then it makes sense, So we were so early, it kind of exposed us to that. And what I saw was like, once that happened, I'm smart. We made a switch. We changed completely how we post content, completely how we discuss content, completely how we bring up new topics. And we have for now 2 years. Like if anyone doesn't believe me, go look at the last 2 years of posts. It's so different than from 2.5 years ago. And that, I think what really helped us out and kind of get us over that hump, like, it was a little hard after like 4,000 followers to like 10,000 followers. Still got a lot of that same like kind of hate throughout that range, because there still wasn't that many people talking about it like early 2020. But once kind of COVID happened and you saw everyone who had so much time and like, hey, I can do that too. I can do that too. You saw so many people coming out like of the woodwork to do podcasts, to do social content, to do all this stuff. And that's a blessing for us. Now it means that there's more voices in the space, which means maybe people listen to us less. I'd rather people listen to us less and get more value out of it than people listen to us and just do whatever we say and mess up what the market is, So like, it helps us out a ton by people coming in and talking about stuff, because it really like, there's so many people, you just can't move a market. Like you said, like it is nearly impossible unless you have so much buying power in a Discord where everyone's like, buy this one card. Like we're not doing that at all. So
absolutely,
just a quick social post will rarely shift anything. If anything, it'll just make people look into it, understand what it is. And I think a lot of people have gotten into that mindset of research first, buy second. Yep. Versus just like impulse buy right away.
Absolutely. And actually one of the craziest things about that, and there's so many ways I want to take this conversation, there's so many ways that we can, that we can hit on this. But one of the biggest things of what you just said is, I also think why you're not seeing that type of, I think there's two reasons that we're not seeing those type of spikes that we used to see, around sports cards, like when either you guys would post or if Gary Vee would bring someone up. Not that there's not, I think, still some movements on someone like Gary Vee's level. I know there's a few pages that, are the specific buying groups, and fuck them. I actually am not a fan of that. I'm a complete old head when it comes to that. But I think because you've seen, one, how popular it is and how many people are talking about it, we're seeing a more educated buyer, in my opinion, because now people are listening to a lot of different people, and it's not just, hey, we're going to blind belief follow this one person. It's like, oh, this person's saying this. I'm going to go check out this page. I'm going to see what this guy says. And now, I think even some of the new, card people are kind of getting into the community a bit, where, people talk with others. It's not just following pages. You also check with your buddies, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And then they have their own insights and stuff like that. So I think you're seeing that. But also, because we've seen the sports card boom in prices and stuff like that, when you guys would post, and I'm just making some shit up, a Trae Young silver, out of the box is $10. We think it's a great buy. Well, people can go, $100 and go buy 10 of them and then inflate the prices. If you say, Anthony Edwards is a decent buy at $600, nobody can go buy 10 of those. So I think like people can't actually, you have to be smarter because the barrier to entry and the buy-in is so much more fucking expensive than what it was 2.5 years ago as well, that it's not as easy to move the market because the buy-in is so much greater.
Right. The easiest cards to move up in price are the ones that are like $10 to $30 because people can afford that range. You're going from $100 to $300 or, $300 to $900. Like that's so different. So different. So like that, I agree with you. The market kind of worked itself out in that way. That kind of discourages that now because it's so expensive too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess to kind of go back to like those stories and like, the Gary V's and stuff like that, I would ask like how, I know I think it's like a Tony Robbins question, but I'll add a little like spin to it. It's, how, a question I always like is how is the worst thing that's ever happened to you actually the best? And I'll kind of ask a variation of that question because obviously we can go through all the different individual stories, but I thought the Gary V one was just, as a talking point, some that, if people don't know your story, will find interesting in itself. But how were situations like that? And once again, kind of asking more on the mindset side and, your, kind of psychology and, how your brain works. How were those situations that, at like in the moment, which sucked? Because I know how hyped you were on Gary Vee. I know how hyped I was for you on that type of stuff. But all of those things on the site, first launching, I think it was a year ago, that we sat down and first probably talked about the site and it's still not up and stuff like that. How do you, how have you turned those things into your biggest wins? I'll kind of ask it at that.
Sure. So the Gary thing falling apart was huge at the time. It's like, oh my gosh, that was our shot to really make it big. And that would have been instant audience, instant security, all that stuff by getting paid through cards. Because at the time we weren't really making much money. We had no idea how we were going to make money through it. We just knew we could like build up this audience and do something someday type of thing. But it's exactly what you said. At the time, it seemed like the worst thing turned into the best thing ever super easily. I would never go back and switch what happened with the whole Gary thing. First off, I got to go back to school. I would have had to quit school right before I graduated my senior year at UW-Mass, and I got to go back one more year with all my friends there and roommates and, go to football games. And even more importantly, I met my girlfriend of now a year and a half that semester. So then moving on to business wise too, like that was absolutely huge for us. Like by giving us that freedom to create and to think and to build a brand again, like we would never be sitting here 45,000 followers on Instagram. We might have that instant huge audience from Gary to listen to us, but like that would never get me to the point where I learned so much through the last 2 years. Like I cannot even tell you how much smart I am now just as a business owner than I was 2 years ago. Like I would have lost all that grasp of time with learning new things, and it would have been terrible to not have that. Because let's say something happens 2 years after Gary hires us and we're left on the street again, it's like, well, now I'm not equipped like I am now. If we never got denied by eBay for the website, we never would have started the sports card breaking on YouTube for our Slabstox breaks, which has been huge. It's been keeping us going. It's been keeping the website dream alive and making that happen. But we will have been, a one-trick pony. And I think that like we don't want to spread ourselves too thin across too many angles, but I think definitely like being in the actual active sports cards with people at least once or twice a week is really important. So I think for a long time, people who don't even know who we are, we're just like, oh, they're just guys that sit in front of a camera, like don't even touch cards, any of that stuff. But like, that's not true at all. Like I've been collecting for 12 years now, but like that really kind of got us ingrained even more in the community aspect. And it's been a huge revenue driver and everything to lead into this website launch. So, everything kind of presents its diamonds once it goes wrong, but it's happened every time. Like never has one situation not worked out and then led to something worse. Like I'm sure Sutton too, the amount of people have even came to like try to invest in us too.
Yeah.
A lot of people come and try to get a piece of the pie, but like we've been really sticking to our guns and knowing that we can do, what our goals are and make it there, even if we do have to bootstrap, or even if it is that we don't get as big in the short term, we think it's going to benefit us long term for sure.
Once again, in all this stuff, there's so much value that I hope, like whoever tunes in to listen to this, kind of gets out of this, because what you're saying is super, super impactful and super insightful for anyone on, whether it's either in their, personal 9-to-5 career or if they're in an entrepreneurship journey. the way that you guys have navigated and continue to build and continue to grow, as things, you know, as the next big moment, you know, either came and went and this and that and continued to pivot, is really a showing to the testament of, at the end of the day, whatever, you know, if you put in the work, you put in the time, and you put in, you know, the effort necessary, even if it's not what you've dreamt today, your future reality, you know, is going to be better than what you can even anticipate. And sometimes it takes, you know, those next big breaks and those next big moments falling through to actually, you know, one, to give you, you know, the thick skin to get you to where you actually deserve, you know, and where you're actually going next. But almost to earn it too, and prove that you are built to have something long term. I can't tell you how many, you know, whether it was hiring salespeople, whether it was potential partnerships with ESA, kind of the same boat. Like I've entertained, you know, like joining with other companies. I've entertained investors, and I've never gone down that road because I've never felt that ESA has been at a point where it's even close to peaking, and where, you know, it's even close to where I've taken it as far as I can take it. So I just continue to kind of the same thing, you know, whereas it would have been nice to have a big influx of cash or a nice, you know, big influx of clients. I've always worked under the assumption of the longer that something takes to grow, and I'm not saying like you should put off growth and stuff like that, but basically the quicker that you exit or give something up, the quicker that it's going to fizzle out on the back end. Whether you trade it for money, well, whatever money that you get, this, you know, it's just going to run out, because money is not, you know, this infinite thing, and especially when you take on an investment. Whether it's an overnight success, like you guys said, if you guys would have signed with Gary and got 45,000 followers overnight, those wouldn't have been 45,000 fans. Those would have been 45,000 leeches. And I'm not trying to use that. It sounds like a dick word, and it kind of is, but it would have just been his stands. And the second that you guys maybe stopped working together, or really like if there would have been any sort of hiccup in him hyping you, you wouldn't have had the engagement. You wouldn't have had the following. You wouldn't be able to do the breaks. You wouldn't have, I mean, there's so much. Like, it's like if somebody blows up overnight with a hit song, you're not an artist. You just have a song that popped, but you're going to be gone tomorrow, you know? And that's what I think is so good about, you know, those blessings that you guys have had. I've been super psyched in the background and not very vocal to you guys. Like when the Gary Vee thing didn't work, I was like, cool, because we're going to see, you know, if these guys can actually do it. And we're going to see how they navigate, you know, something like that. Because for a lot of people, I think that would have been a fatal blow. And that's what's been so exciting to me, to see how you guys have continued to progress, continued to grow, and continue to thrive without having or needing any outside assistance, help, or buy-in, which shows how strong and how legitimate your, you know, product and value points actually are.
Whatever Sutton said, I echo. I mean, that's exactly the mindset I've had. Always grow, always, you know, be changing, always be willing to put in the extra work to show that you're worth being there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess the kind of the next point and stuff like that, I want to kind of talk about a little bit removed from Slabstox, but just talk about the card space a little bit. So we touched on it earlier, but first and foremost, I think I know your answer, but what are your thoughts on the new money in the hobby? And given your platform, what do you think your responsibility is to guide them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of new money. There's a lot of people that don't know what they're doing and putting money into something they might not even know. I don't think that I see it as like, oh, our responsibility to guide them. I think it's our responsibility to like lead them to research. You know, that's what I want. I don't want to be seen as this like shepherd that needs to like walk people to what they need to do. I just want to like provide them thoughts here, thoughts here, thoughts here. They do more research and then they make decisions. I think that's the only way you can learn. That's how I learned over the last 12 years. I'm sure you learned over the last 20, whatever, you know, making mistakes, figuring it out and getting better. You know, I've made more mistakes than anyone in cards probably, and I wouldn't be here without that. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, like my viewpoint on that is, as I said, I'm kind of in between being an old head and a new head, in the card space. Where my gripes are and where I agree with kind of the old head and the old ways of cards are like, literally, I've been with this new, and we can kind of talk about this, but this is where my, you know, this is what matters to me, you know, the $600 next year threshold everyone's paid basically as a traditional contractor would be. So we can talk more about that in a bit. But as that's, you know, on the horizon, I've been selling basically all of, you know, and I was kind of doing it prior, but I'm selling all of my junk or low end, basically anything between, you know, $100 and, you know, $4,000 to $5,000 I'm selling out of. And I basically I'm basically just building almost a mutual fund of, you know, of just 5 to 10 large cards that I'm just carrying. And I'm kind of removing myself from the flipping game. And a lot of that, well, I'll say 90% of that is because now I've been pushed to this with this new tax law coming in 2022. But before that, what prompted me even before that to do that is because I can't stand low end anymore. And there really is no low end. Now low end is like, low end used to be $1 to $5. Now low end to me is like $100 to $500, you know. But there is so much garbage within those cards in terms of people that it makes it's not fun and it's not worthwhile to even trade those cards or to even buy and sell, because the buyer pool for those cards are, and I'm trying to think of the most respectful way to shit on them, but I mean, Sam hears it every day, which is why he's laughing. I rip when I sell those cards. Like, I just sold, I want to say between 5 and 10, you know, $100 to $700 cards on eBay in the last 2 weeks. And I've sold some, you know, older stuff, some vintage stuff, all got paid for perfect. I've sold, you know, I sold like a 2003 Topps Chrome Gold TJ4 that I just had in the PC that I didn't want in the PC anymore. Paid for instantly. The only cards that weren't paid for, Zion's, like fucking Zion Optics and Zion Prisms. And I'm just like, because that's the buyer pool, are the pieces of shit, the StockX fuckers. I hate them. I can't stand this market anymore because they don't have standard buying etiquette. It's why I don't like dealing in anything other than high end, because that's a respectable market. You don't see that within the high end market. That's where I ask the question, like, do you feel there's a responsibility, or do you feel that there's, you know, a value point to it, to try to educate? And it's just these flipper boys that I can't stand. And that's where I ask that question, because that's what I can't stand. because that's what I can't stand. So like when I see you guys doing posts on, you know, stop putting PSA 10 question mark in your fucking listings. Stop putting like, you know, man, like I'm trying to think of, I just saw a crazy one. You know, like the next Mahomes. I think you like post one that was like the next Messi or something like that for soccer. Like,
that's in the description?
Yeah, it's like in the listing. So when you look at Mahomes, that shit comes up. It pisses me off to no avail. So like, do you guys see yourself, like, and you started doing it more, which I'm psyched about, but I was going to ask that question before that post. That's where I meant, like, do you feel a responsibility, or do you find that content as valuable as I think it is for you guys to be posting?
I think it's valuable, but I don't think we want to get into the realm of like trying to be like pessimistic towards certain areas.
Turn into like a meme page.
Yeah,
about the flipper boys.
Yeah, that's also true.
If I was just some random guy in the industry, like I don't want to play you down, but just some random guys buying and selling cards. Yeah. You know, go ahead and post all you want and then business. It's like I can't, you know, our entire brand's built up on positivity and making sure we're like encouraging others. Like that was very out there, that post where I was like, hey, like these keyword spamming is dumb. Like I've never really done that in the last like year or so. And there's definitely a couple of people like, oh, why are you like telling people how to list and stuff? And I'm like, I'm just trying to bring education to people that I don't want to see these listings when I search, you know?
And like, obviously I came at it like from a complete asshole standpoint, and that I know. I mean, like I definitely came at it from, you know, from more of a triggered mindset. But like, I think that you can be positive and be, you know.
Yeah, I will tell you. So like I did one Instagram TV or IG live stream on like people that it was something about people bidding up certain cards or something, shilling certain cards. Like I have done videos in the past on certain ones, but like probably not going to get to the point where I'm like, hey, all you know, people stop, you know, like bid on. But yeah, I do see what you're saying. I do think it's valuable because I do think that there is a certain amount of respect that you should trade with, and I don't like it either. Like I don't want people to go on there and not pay for something.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying is like, and I'm not saying it's not the old heads. I mean, like, trust me, the old heads have their own problems. Like, look at the trimming scandal. That's not new people. Like, and we won't go into that, like, you know, a ton, but like, they have their own, like, old heads we have our own problems in the card space in terms of ethics, in terms of like, there's enough shit going on, but more of like the petty stuff, like the not paying for items, the shilling, the, you know, running cards up, you know, the pump and dumping. That's not traditional for sports cards.
No, I don't like it either. But at the same time, you know, like, I don't know how much of this fits into our brand right now. You know, like,
yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Because the moment we start opening up our mouths about stuff like that, people will just start to criticize us more. You know, like trying to find as many ways that people don't try to criticize as possible. I'm not saying we're like trying to like hide, you know, I'm just saying like just trying to not, the more you attack others, the more others come and attack you. That just kind of seems to be the way that happens on social media with cards. And I think you know that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially if you think that's more the new wave of people. You don't want to turn away, like, just right off the get-go, like, the whole influx of the
exactly. And they'll learn. They'll get some messages from people on eBay, probably from Sutton, that are not very nice.
Oh, Sam, yeah. Oh no, I was on a call with my buddy yesterday when I got one of the chargebacks or whatever, and the guy DM'd me some just bullshit. He's got 8 feedback, you know, 2021 account, and I used that as a vengeance. If you thought this was bad, I was just like, you know, fuck you. You're definitely getting a charge back. Like, I'm not canceling this order. Like, you bought the card yesterday. How do you not have money this morning?
People like you will take care of that for me.
Absolutely. So I guess playing into that. So obviously we've seen, you know, this sports card boom happen. How do you know, none of us are Nostradamus, but just, you know, where do you see it continuing to go? Because obviously on the super high-end stuff, we've seen a hit. I bought, you know, what I deem to be a fairly, you know, high-end Giannis. You know, I bought that Immaculate about a month and a half ago. And now I've seen, you know, that the high-end market's kind of, you know, seeing a little bit of an adjustment. I think that, you know, on the low-end stuff, on that stuff, you know, you're still seeing it, but you're seeing like that, you know, where the high-end just absolutely went freaking nuclear. It's kind of seeing a little bit, at least on the plentiful stuff, which I could have told you was going to happen. But where do you see that, you know, kind of going in the market as a whole? Because we've seen, you know, a crazy growth. Like, I thought it was crazy 2 years ago. I thought it was crazy 3 years ago. And every year it just keeps getting more and more freaking nuts. Do you see it continuing? Do you see it leveling off? Or do you see the next 12 months being similar? Because I really think anything is possible at this point.
I think there's so many businesses around cards now. There's so many people that are into cards with a ton of money. There's so many people that like hinge their livelihoods on this now that I don't see it necessarily like leveling off or crashing. I think we'll see certain aspects of the market flatten, trend up, trend down like they are now. You know, like something goes nuclear, like Kobe's in January. Of course they're going to drop. You know, it's impossible for that stuff to go up forever. I think it'll be more of that than the former, where, you know, you see stuff really level off and like not come back. Like, I think we saw a big dip over the last 2 months. Well, I think, you know, towards the national, I think that's going to be the time where, you know, we're kind of sitting steady for a bit. I think it's going to pop off huge into the national going into next year. So I think there's a lot of potential still everywhere in the market. I think you just need to play it right and don't get too over leveraged on one certain aspect. If you're not completely into it, you know, like if you don't really know what you're doing.
Absolutely. And so I guess like for, you know, as a business perspective, you guys have, and these are the last, I guess, 2 kind of business questions I'll wrap up with. You've got the site coming. You guys, I don't want to ask for kind of like an ETA, but where do you think that takes your business? You know, what is your mindset with this? You know, where do you think that this lies and everything that you guys have done? Do you feel like this, you know, is, you know, night and day from what you guys have been doing, and this throws you guys into another stratosphere? Kind of explain, you know, I think you touched on it a bit, but explain exactly what you guys are building and what do you think that does for Slabstox? Right.
Definitely building like a free price guide tool. It lets people go on, search certain players, see the cards that matter the most to that player. You know, like we're trying to make sure this is pretty pinpointed. Especially with our data collection method, we can't host everything. It's actually impossible, or we go bankrupt, one of the two. But you know, we're really trying to pinpoint this platform to what people, you know, want to see and what gives them the most information the quickest. And you'll get on there, you'll search a player, search a card, you might find it. And when you do find it, you'll see their chart, their trend line over the last, you know, month, week, 3 months, whatever you want to filter by. and you'll see what the value is right now based on the last sale that we've collected. You'll see items you can buy on eBay and everything. And it's pretty much just going to be your go-to, like, I need to know how much this player might be worth or something. Like, you're definitely going to need to start. I'll tell you what, it's got a long way to go. Like, we got really, really limited when eBay shut it off, the data feed, super limited. Like, we had to get very specific in how we're doing this. It's going to grow over time though, and we'll make it better as we go. But no one out there is really offering this for free. People are charging an arm and a leg to even get people charts that change, that have dynamic data. So this will be very important for people. I think it's going to be huge for the business. This is very different than anything we've done, because everything we've done has been hinged through a social media page, an Instagram, a YouTube. Like, once we get our center of gravity that people are going to see Slabstox Pro daily, that's what's really going to take us the next level forward. I think it's going to make us really serious in the space, because, like, we've gotten serious just based off of social media, voice, content, discussion, sharing, and all that stuff, which is important. But this is going to be the thing that makes people be like, oh, wow, they're for real. Like, they have tech now. Like, they have something that people can sign on, create an account, and really, like, go to daily. Like, that's so important for us. I think it's going to really blow up. I think it's going to be really, really be important for our long-term growth, because, people are going to look at this and say, wow, that can be a lot better. But they started very well for just, having not much money or not much, team or anything. Like, there's a few of us working on this, and we've done it to here already. Like, there's so much growth potential between expanding team, getting more money, building up the website in different ways. Like, it just gives us the sky's the limit with this. We can do anything to this website we want, aside from getting an eBay data feed, and we can grow it however we want.
I mean, it's similar to how you grew the social with the card space. You're going at it early, and you're going to learn as you go, and it's going to continue to develop.
That's the only way to do it. That's the only way to do it. You guys start somewhere. For us, it's always like, how do we get this to launch? It's the most important part. We're going to be missing some things here. We'll be missing some things here. I know people are going to hate on it a little bit, because it's like, well, this isn't as good as, market movers. Yeah, well, I'm not charging you $600 a month. I'm giving it to you for free and letting you know that we're going to build this up and make it better for you as we go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, not 600 a month, 600, 500 a year or whatever.
It's all good. There's an excellent lesson in that. And that's something, as I, either work with, the clients, the VSA, or if I do consulting, or even in content, as I just talk with people, either it's in DMs or whatever. One of the biggest things I always talk about is people get so wrapped up in creating the LLC, creating the website, having the email domain, pricing their product. Do I have the right, advertising and sales pitches? And people get so bogged down in everything before actually delivering a product. With Every Second Accounts, I didn't have a website. I didn't have an email. I didn't have literally anything in place besides the fact I knew I was starting a company called Every Second Accounts when I landed my first client. That first client paid for my email domain for the first, it paid for my, LLC. It paid for, like, all the legitimate, stuff. And it also is what taught me, like, that's how I learned how to price. I didn't sit for 6 months or a year and think, well, here's what my, I knew what my competitors would charge, but here's what my competitors are charging. Where do I want to come in? I just, would start talking to people and reaching out to people that needed this service, or, or they'd reach out and I'd say, hey, it cost X. And some people would say, like, oh, that's too high. And if, I got 2 to 3 people in a row that said this price was too high, I'd lower it a bit. And then if those people started buying and stuff, and then my capacity started building and I saw the value, I'd start, let the market tell you, where to improve to. And what I love on that, because the market's going to tell you what your, market value is. The market's going to tell you whether or not you have a good service or a good product. And that's where I think, the market's told you guys that you guys have a worthwhile and valuable product by the way that you've, grown your socials and stuff like that. I love that you're building, your own platform, so you have ownership and you're not leveraged and at the mercy of, organic feeds and, organic feeds, reach, and all of that stuff. It's nice to have your own platform where you own, everything.
We just need to give people a reason to come to it. And that's what that's what Slabstox Pro is. It's going to give people a reason to visit the website. Then we launch our news feed. We're really reporting on cards like ESPN does on headlines, for sports. So, and then people are going to read that all the time. It's going to be really good.
Absolutely. And literally, I'm not sure this will be the case, but like I said, with the comments thing or things like that, I would make a bold prediction that the biggest value point or the biggest selling point of either where you guys earn or what brings the most value on this website is going to be something that you don't even have in mind today yet. It's going to be something because you guys go to market, you launch, you provide value, and the consumer is going to wind up telling you exactly what, you know, they want to see. And I would literally put money on, not that the products that you're putting out aren't outstanding, but that your either biggest moneymaker or your biggest value proposition is not going to be active on the site day one.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
So the last business thing I'll ask is, obviously you guys have gotten into the breaks. Congrats on that. I saw the LeBron gold. That was fucking awesome. I know you've hit some big soccer stuff, but I don't really know what, you know, I don't really know what's big and what's not. I just judge based on your reaction half the time. But do you see that continuing? Is that something you want to continue to, you know, build on? Do you want to do it more often, less frequent? Where do you kind of see that going for your business model?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the most valuable thing that we all have is time, and I can't copy myself. I can't make two of myself, but I think for now, like as we launch this website, we need, you know, we want to continue this right now and we want to continue it into the future. It's just, how do we do it? It might switch a bit, you know, it might be, we want to be like the most unique break spot. We know that we can't offer the best prices on the new stuff because we can't get it for the cheapest. We know we can't, you know, basically that's what it is. We just can't. We don't have distributor licenses. We don't have manufacturer licenses. I source all of our product secondhand, but it gives me the ability to do whatever I want. I can bring in whatever I want. I can break whatever I want. I can really provide the most value to people because people know I'm opening product that I value, you know, and people trust my opinion. We're definitely going to continue it. I don't know how it necessarily looks, probably similar to now, but you know, if time gets thin between the website launch, maybe a little bit less product, maybe a little bit more product as we start to build the team, you know, we'll see how that grows. I mean, everything's on the table though, you know, as we grow and as we hire more people, maybe we do make a full breaking segment to where we do get those licenses. We do really like, you know, get people to run that for us type of thing. There's so many ways we can grow in the market, you know, it's just a lot of it will be figured out as we go, like I said.
Absolutely. And to really hone in on that point and give another value point or a lesson in what you said, there's something to really be said about the way that you just answered that question, and something that I hope anyone who's watching really takes in. The fact that you just, you know, you don't have a steadfast plan. And I think that's so important for any entrepreneur or any person really, you know, whether it's in your career or this or that. You've got to be able to adapt and not get, you know, and not get set on the fact of either how things are or what your, you know, current plan or trajectory or outlook is. Because there's so much value. And I think, you know, why you guys are where you're at today, I know it's what's gotten me to where I'm at today, is the fact that I don't have, you know, a 3 month, a 6 month, you know, I have goals. You have these, you know, you have things that you set in place, but you set it and almost forget it. Because, you know, life is going to tell you the way that things are going. And like, I love that you answered, you know, like if breaks start, you know, really popping, we get better product, we'll pick it up. Or if the site does this, we'll go the other way. That's what shows me how successful, why you guys have been successful and why you're going to continue to be successful, is because you're going to let life continue to show you, you know, what are the areas where you guys are going to kill it. And then I know that you're going to double, triple down and just absolutely get the most out of it, which is tremendous. So just a testament to you and Nate on continuing to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's for sure. All I try to do is to always be adaptive, because if you be adaptive, you can always make sure you're on top of it.
Absolutely. So the last thing I'll say about breaking, and the last thing I'll say about your responsibility in the hobby, because this is another area that just irks me and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. You've done a tremendous job of it, I'll say. I was very nervous. I'm always nervous when I watch breaks of how the breaker acts. I'll say, and I actually don't give a shit by calling them out. Like, I think Pole Wax does a lot of cool shit. But if I hear somebody go, Justin, her one more fucking time, I'm going to punch him through the IGTV or through IG Live. I fucking hate it.
This dude
like,
also,
tag him in it.
like 2 weeks ago, or whatever, this dude is literally, he's just going through. He keeps watching all of them. He's like, listen to
I'm like, listen to
he's just doing it, just grind. He's getting all fired up. He's like, Sam, have you heard these? I'm like, no, I don't really feel like, I'm not a huge card guy. Like, I understand sports and I had to like get the players, but he's like, dude, just watch this. And he's like, look at how he's saying his name. He's going through all of them.
Yeah, it's the fucking worst. And not like, yo, if you hit the Zion Optic 101, or like the guy just hit the Justin Herbert 101, yo, if you want to lose your shit, absolutely fucking lose your shit. If you want to lose your shit because you hit the fucking Zion and LeBron flawless logo, man, abso-freaking-lutely. but you just hit a select red out of 149, dude. And like that's okay. And like jokes aside, that actually pisses me off because these people are buying into breaks. These cards are not cheap anymore, and like I love like AJ Dillon and these guys, and like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and all of these players, like, but if you're breaking, if you're buying into like a Prism break at $500 a slot or $400 a slot, or I don't even know a Prism, like Bass, like some of these are going for. And these breakers, I think they're doing a disservice, like on a serious note, they do a disservice to the buyer, and it makes cards just look so foolish. And it makes the hobby look so weak when you're freaking out over hitting a $20, $30, $40 card when somebody paid $300 for that slot or $200 for that slot. It just makes me cringe, and I think that that's actually a disservice. And I think breakers that have, leverage and have followings and stuff like that, that is very, very irresponsible and very dangerous to go down that road. So I know I put the joking aspect in there, and yes, it pisses me off and I get triggered by it, but actually the reason it really pisses me off isn't because it's outlandish and I think it's just a gimmick. It's because I think it's doing a disservice, and I think it's irresponsible, for that matter, to the consumer to react that way and to get people that are watching to think something amazing is happening and then to want to buy in and then find out the hard way that literally breaking is gambling. And you can lose a fuck ton of money very quickly, and those cards aren't shit for what you're paying. So I certainly applaud you for not getting into that.
No, I agree. I mean, get excited over the card, get excited over how it looks. You definitely want to make sure that like you're not overhyping stuff on the monetary side that isn't there. Otherwise, you're just going to get yourself in dangerous waters. It's like, oh, like, I know this isn't the biggest hit, but it looks really good. Like I like, like stuff like that. And that's, it's not to say that like I do that to make people think that they get something super valuable. It's just like, hey man, like we collect cards. I collect cards. I love cards that look good. Like, there's some cards I bought that are worth crap compared to what I paid, but they look great. I love them and I can display them and stuff. So like, that's the same mindset that I go ahead with. And yeah, I agree. I mean, you never want to false advertise something because then you open yourself up to a whole can of worms. You probably don't want coming down the road later when something might change. If we have regulation stuff, like, you're going to get hit fat with some fines or whatever. I don't know what it might be. I have no idea. Just going offhand here.
Absolutely. So I have two final questions, and I know I know this has been a nice, it's been a timely sit down, but so I have two more questions, and we'll wrap up. Just because I know you're a big proponent of it, and I'm actually not super familiar with it outside of just knowing that it exists. What are your thoughts on owning shares of cards, like on Rally? I know Collectibles another one. What do you think its place is in the hobby, and where do you see that, going in the future? Do you see it becoming more and more prevalent, or kind of maintaining where it is today?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think you need to give people opportunity to own even a part of a card that they'll never be able to afford. I know people are like, oh, I just get something and put it that you can actually hold in your hand. But in reality, it's like, that's not the same as even thinking that you have even a monetary a monetary like symbol of that card. Like even holding like 10 shares of a Jordan PSA 10 is cool. And that was never possible in the past. And I think there's a place for all those companies. I think that certain ones that adapt the quickest and make sure they provide the best service are going to win and do it in the right, mindset. Like, I don't know. I know there's a lot of like regulation that goes into it and being able to sell those that way and everything. I know there's some apps that are doing a 24/7 trade. I know some like Rally have to wait 3 months before they even open trading, on it. So like, I don't know what's right. I don't know what is possible. I don't know what isn't possible. So for me, it's like hard to really get behind something right now without doing more research. But like, I think that if Rally could change to a more dynamic selling basis on their cards, they would do super well. They have the best app. I think I will say this. I haven't used too many other apps, but I do think that their interface is really cool. And I think that they have a huge brand, but I do think that they need to adapt a little bit more or try to. I know that they want to, because no one wants to wait 3 months before you can open up an asset to trade. But I know there's certain regulations that go into it. So we'll see. I think there's a place for it for sure. I think it drives the high end market too, for people who actually can own the cards like yourself. So I think you want that, you want that aspect of it.
Absolutely. So just and another question on that. Do you think that those are comps? do you use those as comps, or do you think that those are justifiable to use as comps for
like the IPO amount, or like the trading value of it after the IPO?
both?
So IPO, I think potentially yes. I don't think it's like a true comp, but I think it's like close enough. But like a trading window, like we saw the LeBron Topps Chrome Refractor BGS 10, it IPO'd at 100K from Raleigh. The first trading window opened. The card sold for 300K like a week ago, and it traded at 150K was the new value after the trading. So it only went up, 33% or whatever that was, $50,000.
Yeah.
And it didn't get up to that full value of that card. Interesting.
Yeah, I definitely did not know that actually.
Interesting, but that's why I would say like trading window is probably not a great comp basis. Like if someone goes on there and I own a Topps Chrome LeBron Refractor BGS 10 PWCC auction one at 300K, and they're like, oh well, Raleigh's trading one is 150. I'm like, no.
Absolutely. So last question, and we'll get you back to your day here. For someone who's watching this and wants to create Slabstox or the next Slabstox or the next card company, or really just the next company, playing once again on kind of the point of the show, when every second counts, make every second account for something great. What would be your, biggest piece of advice or guidance to them to go out and build something such as, what you built with Slabstox?
Well, first off, you got to put in the work. If you don't really want to do it, don't start it, because you're just going to fizzle out. And it's not going to amount to anything. If you really think you want to do it and you really want to like get yourself into running your own schedule, into producing content, stuff you love or think others value too, you got to be to put in the time and effort with tons of sacrifices and not much money to start. It's just fact. I went through 2 years of barely making any money. Still right now through the actual business, very hard to make money myself as an individual, because I'm investing so much into the business, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to be ready to make those sacrifices. You got to start. If you don't start, you're never going anywhere is the second point. And then you have to be willing to reach out to everyone, to talk to anyone that even gives you a look. If someone comes on and watches your Instagram live and there's 2 people in there, talk with those people, and then it'll start to build as you go. The first Instagram live that Nate and I ever did had 2 people in it. That was 2.5 years ago. Now we're over 100 and some of them constantly interacting, like 1,000 throughout the hour come through and stuff. So you really just got to be willing to, talk to the audience, talk to customers or even potential clients, like for yourself. And like, you just got to start and put your hard work in. It's really all it comes down to.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. I hope if you have any tips or pointers for us, you can feel free to either roast me now or text me after. But I super appreciate you being the first guest. I appreciate you being a guest and hopping on. I know this was a lot longer than our slotted time, but I felt like we were really rocking and rolling. I appreciate all the value you provided. And I truly, really admire what you guys have built. And I obviously wish you guys nothing but the best. I'm excited to see, where you guys continue to take the company.
Thank you, Sutton. Thank you everyone for listening too. And thanks, Sam, for being here and tagging along. It's been a fun time. I always appreciate being able to share our journey and see how others can, use it and benefit themselves and make themselves better and do what they really want to in life. Cause that's what it's about, right?
Absolutely, man. I love that. Perfectly said. And on that note, man, have a great rest of the day. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Thank you, Sutton.
Awesome.
Thank you, Sam.
Yep. See you guys. Take care.